Hi YouTube, and welcome back to my channel. So we're still doing the countdown to my 50th birthday. I just finished the first 4 decades of my life in 10-year compilations, and I'm going to start now with age 41, which would have been back in 2013. I turned 41 in 2012 in December, so like most of 2013 is when I was 41, and so at age 40 is when I got married, and at age 41 is when Dave and I bought a house together. So we had been living together in the house that he had bought about 15 years earlier, when he was in his 20s. I think he borrowed money from his family and to get a down payment, and he was making a pretty decent salary at Hewlett Packard at the time, and bought the house and fixed it up and everything, and it was originally intended to be a starter home for him, and he just kind of really liked it and just didn't feel like selling it and buying something else and upgrading until I came along. And when I moved in, he was living very much the bachelor life and everything, and hadn't really done a lot with the place. He fixed it up a little bit, but he had very little furniture. He was a dude, very much a dude, and I kind of liked a little bit more of a cozy place to live. But it was a home built in the 1970s. It had no ducting for anything, so it had baseboard heat. It had no AC, and because of this weird thing in Colorado, all of the windows, or let's say a good portion of the homes in Colorado, have windows that open side to side instead of up and down, which means that if you put an AC in these windows, there's a lot of window above the AC, if you put an in-window AC unit in, and so you have to kind of like block it off with something, so that you don't lose all the air and get all the hot air coming in, which Dave did in his downstairs. He put I don't know why he put it downstairs instead of upstairs. It didn't make sense, and we ultimately put a whole house fan in, because it's drier air out here, so we do get cooler air in the evenings most years, and so once the sun sets and the air cools off, we were able to turn the whole house fan on and suck all the hot air out and cool things off a little bit, and run the AC downstairs to help suck that and circulate that through the house a little bit, so we could sleep at night without being complete puddles of sweat. But it was an older house. It was not a layout that I liked and everything, and it bothered him that I didn't love his house. It bothered him so much that he ultimately decided he wanted to buy a new house, only because his house bothered me. It didn't bother me that I didn't like the house. I mean, it wasn't my dream house. I was hoping that eventually one day, maybe in a decade or so, the two of us would have enough funds to be able to sell his house and upgrade to something nicer and everything. But I was not in any rush to do this. But he had spun it up in his mind that I was miserable in his house, which I wasn't. I never uttered that. I never said anything. He's the one who came to me and said, do you like my house? And I was like, well, do you want me to be honest? And one of the things that was a hallmark of our relationship was that we were always honest with each other. We didn't try and sugarcoat things just because we were worried about someone else's feelings or something. And so, I mean, I was never, blunt to the point of cruelty or anything of that nature, which some people can be. I was nice about it. It was like, it's not my dream house, but it's functional. It's got everything we need. And we did, when he first realized that it wasn't like the nicest house in the world. It's like, well, it wasn't. He went ahead and remodeled the kitchen, and we put in some nice, faux wood laminate flooring in the kitchen and in several other rooms. it had great carpeting. One thing I will say about that house is it had beautiful carpeting. And it was a tri-level kind of a house and stuff. Long story short, he was not happy that I didn't love the house, and even after remodeling, it was like, well, the layout just wasn't the best, and it had the baseboard heat, and there were things where it was a dated house, and it wasn't my dream house. And so in 20 yeah so it was 2013. It was in 2012, we talked about it, and in 2013 he was like, fine, we're gonna go buy a house. I was like, are you sure? And the reason I hesitated, because one, I wasn't miserable in that house. I really wasn't. I mean, okay, it wasn't my dream house, but it was fine. But two, I wasn't financially in a good place yet. He really wanted me to get rid of my Saturn and wanted me to be in a Subaru. And so I saved up money, and between trading in my Subaru and the money I had in savings, I was able to buy a new Subaru outright, without having to get car payments and stuff, because he didn't want me to have car payments. But that kind of drained my savings. And I bought that in 2011. And so it was 2013. I'm like, it's been 2 years. I was building back my savings, but I wasn't ready yet. And I was like, look, let me get at least, $20,000 or $30,000 in the savings before we go and look at buying houses, because the agreement was he was going to sell his house and put 50% down on a new house, and then the other 50% of the house would be on me, with the mortgage, and I would be responsible for paying for it, which, we like to share everything 50-50. We went out to dinner, we paid everything 50-50, just everything was 50-50 with us. And ultimately, I was like, look, the nature of my analytics business, it's up and down, it's cyclical. Sometimes I am, making 10 grand a month, and sometimes I'm making nothing. That was at that point, this is just the way it was. Clients, didn't always need my services. Some clients just came and went. Some clients were like, they only needed me quarterly. It was a boom or bust kind of a situation, and I had to be careful. And I was like, let me build my savings. But he got to be insistent. He was like, no, we need to buy this house. I'm like, okay. And this is kind of foreshadowing for mental health reasons later with Dave, but he was insistent on it, and I was like, well, if you're sure, because he was the one with the funds, he was the one with the savings and with the investments and everything, and it was like, well, if you're okay with, and I was very clear, like I was like, hey, look, there might be times when I'm gonna have it tough with my money, so, and I don't have the savings to back it up right now. He was, it'll be fine. I'm like, okay, all right, if you're sure. So we went ahead and we did some house hunting, and we literally looked at 3 homes and put an offer on one, and that's the house we're in now. The first one we looked, this was the second one we looked at. The first one we looked at was kind of cool. It was a kind of cool house. It had a nice unfinished basement that was really big that we could have, remodeled into something really nice. Really liked it. Had an office right off of the entryway. Had a really nice living room and kitchen, kind of a great room kind of situation going on. Upstairs, it was nice. And one of the things is we had to have separate bedrooms. Because of our sleeping habits and everything. And so, and I think I mentioned that in the last video. But anyway, and so one of us would have gotten the master, and the other one of us would have taken one of the other bedrooms, and then turned, because I think it had 3 bedrooms, a master and 2 bedrooms, and we already had an office downstairs, and so we could have, I don't know, I think it was, one was going to be a guest room, one was going to be one of our bedrooms, and one of us was going to get the master. And it was, and the the weird thing with this house was the entire master suite, master bath, master bedroom was purple. Purple carpets, purple walls, purple curtains and towels, and I mean, obviously not all of that was going to come with the house, but everything, like the sinks were purple, the toilet was purple, the bathtub was purple, everything. These people liked purple a lot. It was a bit much. We were like, okay, we would have had to make some changes with that, because okay, purple is nice and all, but not that much. But we ultimately decided not to get that house because, I mean, one, the secondary bedrooms beyond the master was, they were kind of small. So whichever one of us didn't end up in the master would have ended up with a smaller bedroom, and so it was like, eh. And then on top of that, it was really close to a busy street, and Lexi, of our two dogs, Lexi loved to just zoom out the front door, and sometimes we couldn't catch her in time, and by the time we would catch up with her, she'd be like several blocks away, and that made us nervous. Lexi does not do this anymore. She gave that up a few years ago, thank goodness. We got really good at making sure that she couldn't, and she's just kind of not had it in her head anymore to do that. But for the first few years that we had her, it was kind of touch and go for a couple of escapes that she did. It was like, yeah. Anyway, so we passed on that house. We looked at this house, and it was actually a builder experiment. You know, this is a build from dirt kind of neighborhood. And this house was about 80% complete. It was built. They had not stained the flooring yet. They hadn't put the carpet in yet. The counters in the kitchen weren't in, and none of the appliances were in. That kind of thing. We mostly liked this house. We liked the light. It was a main floor master, which was nice. That ultimately became my bedroom, and then it was a 2 bedrooms upstairs with a combined Jack and Jill bath. So it was kind of like a suite of rooms that could have been turned into yet another kind of a master situation. And so that ultimately worked. So the upstairs ended up working really well for Dave, because he was able to have one really nice, really large room. It was actually larger than his master in his old house. It wasn't quite as large as the master downstairs, but ultimately it worked really well because it only had 1 window, and the master and the downstairs in this house has 5 windows, and he likes dark. He liked having very dark rooms and blackout blinds and everything, and so only having 1 window to block out rather than 5 was much better for him. And so, ideally the layout was great. The only thing that we didn't like in this house was that there was a huge loft. So the room I'm in right now, that's my office, we actually asked them, since they were still constructing, if they could wall this loft off into a separate room to make it into an office. And that's what they agreed to. That when we made the offer, we're like, okay, we'll offer this much, but could you do X, Y, and Z with the build? And they agreed to it, and that was great. There was a third house that we did look at after this one that had as soon as we came into the property, the garage had a lot of damage on the door, so the garage door would have needed to be repaired or fixed or replaced. Walking into the house, it was clear they had tried to clean the house, but they were clearly hoarders or something akin to hoarders, because when we looked at the garage, the entire garage from floor to ceiling was stacked with boxes. I don't even know how they got it all in there. It was ridiculous. And anytime you opened a closet door, everything was stacked. They shoved everything into cabinets and doors to try and clear the rooms up and everything. And it was not well maintained. I think they smoked, and you could smell it, and it was not a good property, and it was much more expensive than this house, and we were like, no. So we ended up with this house because of the other two just were unacceptable, And Dave liked this house. He was like, hey, this is, it's got good bones, and that was something he really cared about, and ended up like not wanting to look at other houses. He was like, okay, this house, the only thing I didn't really like about this house that was not able to be changed was downstairs in the living room. They had it set up so that you had like a fireplace right next to a nook for a TV, and the nook for the TV was actually too small for the TV we had. It would fit maybe a 40-inch at best. And people were already buying 55, 60-inch TVs even in 2013. So, it's like wouldn't be able to be upgraded. So we ended up having to switch the entire living room around and put the back of the couch to that, so you couldn't be facing the fireplace. And the fireplace was kind of asymmetrical with that nook. And so that bit has always bugged me. It's something that if I could ever afford it, right now I can't, but if I could ever afford it, I would redo that entire wall, get rid of the nook, center the fireplace. It's a gas fireplace that just vents out to the side of the house, so it could be repositioned and everything. That would make the room a little bit nicer, and I could maybe reconfigure the living room so that you could have things set up so that you could see the TV on one wall and the fireplace on the other wall, and make that a little bit more of an open space. Right now I've got a big L-shaped couch in there, and everything faces the TV on the opposite wall, which is that 20-foot wall because it's got cathedral ceilings and everything, which is nice. But it's a great house. But yeah, so that's the whole story of why we moved and why we got this house. And as I predicted, I ran into a dry spell with my business, and I was like, honey, I need your help with the mortgage because, I told you this would happen. He got a little upset about that, but it's not like I didn't warn him ahead of time, because I did. As we were preparing to move, and we had to replace the roof on the old house, and we had to do a deep clean of the old house, just all of the things that we needed to do with the old house, because we moved into this house, prepped the old house for sale first. I think Dave actually dove into his savings to do the down payment on this house. We moved everything, and then we had time. We took a solid month to really scrub that old house down and get everything prepared for the sales and everything. And in that time period, just before we moved into the new house, I had two cats at the time. I had Maxie and Maury, and that's when Maury suddenly passed away. He was only 10, which, for cats is actually not, that's about middle age for cats, because cats can be like 15 to 20, is not unusual for a cat. And he was the cat that I adopted. He was the second cat I adopted. I adopted him a year after I got Maxie, so that Maxie would have a companion. And he was the day after I adopted him, he was like burning up with a fever. He had been found as a feral kitten, abandoned on the side of a road or something. That's the story I got from him anyway. And he'd hopped around several different places before ending up at not PetSmart, the other one. I forget the name of it, but the opposing chain to PetSmart. And so I got him, and the next day he was burning up with a fever. I had to take him to emergency vet services. Turns out he had a really severe respiratory infection. They had to rehydrate him because he was dehydrated. And then I spent the next 2-3 months feeding him because he was so sick he wouldn't eat. And so I had to give him, I had to hold him and give him this antibiotics that smelled like bananas. Why would you make banana flavored antibiotics for kittens? I don't understand. And then because he wouldn't eat, I would puree, because this was before it was really common to have kitten formula at the pet stores, or at least I wasn't aware of it, and my vet just said to take wet food and puree it with water, and that way he would get water and food, and then just dropper feed him that as much as I could get him to take. And I would do that like 2, 3, 4 times a day. every day for several months. But he survived, and he got bigger, and he became like this really healthy, beautiful cat. Didn't like me very much. He loved Maxie. He and Maxie became like best friends. They were always cuddling together. They were inseparable. Loved each other a lot. And Maury was like, you know, you're the evil person who force fed me, and I don't like you. So while Maxie loved me, and Maxie was always curled up on my lap, and Maury would be like, traitor. It was an interesting relationship. But at age 10, Maury had a heart failure, and they had like this whole kitten paradise in our basement, and with a cat tree, and just everything was there for them down in the basement. And I remember noticing that I hadn't seen Maury come up for a few hours, and then all of a sudden Maxie started wailing, not just crying, but wailing. And I was like, what is wrong? So I run down to the basement, and there's Maury laying there, and he looks like he's asleep, but he doesn't react. Usually he'll pick up his head and look at you when you're coming down the stairs, and he did not react, did not move. Looked like he was asleep, did not move, and I was like, he's dead. Poked him a couple times. Yeah, he's dead. He must have gone down there a few hours earlier, because I'd seen him a few hours earlier, and then he must have gone downstairs and then laid down and just was gone. Because rigor mortis had already set in, because he was like stiff, wouldn't move. And you know, I screamed for Dave, and we shoved him into a cat carrier and took him to emergency vet services, and we were like, what do we do? Oftentimes every pet that I've ever had, I had to euthanize, because they had some illness or other, and they were, old age and things, and don't want them to suffer. And this is the first time I had a pet where they had died on me before I got them to a vet. And so I was, and he had shown absolutely no signs whatsoever of being ill. And so yeah, they determined through a necropsy that he'd had heart failure, and he was gone, so he never got to see the new house. But yeah, so that made 2013 an interesting year. That was also the year where, if you look back on my old videos, if you just kind of go through the timeline of things, if you go back to the videos in 2013, I did a lot of gaming videos. So this channel, I was trying to expand it beyond just vlogging and doing gaming videos. I actually got quite a lot of views on some of those videos. They became quite popular, especially the World of Warcraft walkthroughs. I think I started those in 2012 and then continued into 2013. And then eventually I decided to start my own gaming channel, which is still up, but I don't post there anymore. I may have emails that I haven't, or comments that I haven't checked in years, so. But for a while there, I had a good mix of vlogs and gaming videos on this channel. I was doing some Sims series, I was doing some Ion RPGs, but I think the ones that were the most popular were because I once I got to a high enough level, I went back and did some solo runs of dungeons and things, which that was a lot of fun. And it was a way for me to kind of do a walkthrough of a dungeon without having to coordinate with other players in the game, and things. And I've gotten quite a few good comments of like, hey, thanks, I got stuck on that part of the dungeon, and I really wanted to get through that, and so thank you for showing that. So at the time, that was actually a popular little series of mine, so that was a lot of fun. So, but that was basically my 41st year in 2013. Was that the house was the big thing, buying, selling, prepping, all that stuff. So, thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you tomorrow for my 42nd year review. And if you're enjoying the series, consider, giving a thumbs up, a like. If you comment, I will respond. I will talk to you. I always enjoy interacting with people. So until tomorrow, take care.